I turned my key in the lock at 7:43 a.m., and I remember the exact time, because I'd been watching the clock for the last hour of my shift, counting down the minutes until I could collapse into my own bed. 12 hours. 12 hours of bedpans and call buttons and a code blue in the ICU that left my scrubs splattered with someone else's emergency. My feet were screaming. My back felt like it had been twisted by someone who hated me. All I wanted was silence, my pillow, and maybe 8 uninterrupted hours of sleep before I had to do it all over again. But when I pushed open the door to my apartment, I knew immediately that something was wrong. The boxes hit me first. Cardboard boxes, stacked in the hallway, taped shut with that cheap brown packing tape from the dollar store, and on every single one, written in thick black Sharpie, Everly. My name, like I was a tenant being evicted, like I was a stranger in my own home. I stood there, frozen, my work bag sliding off my shoulder and hitting the floor with a dull thud. My brain couldn't process it. I'd left for work yesterday afternoon, and everything had been normal. Derek had kissed me goodbye, told me to drive safe, said he'd leave dinner in the fridge. And now my life was packed into boxes in the hallway. I walked forward slowly, like I was approaching a crime scene. The apartment smelled different. Not like us. Like lavender and something cooking. Something savory and rich like a Sunday dinner. Except it was Wednesday morning and I sure as hell wasn't cooking anything. That's when I heard it. Humming. Someone was humming in my kitchen. I rounded the corner, and there she was. Miriam. My mother-in-law. Wearing my apron, the one with the faded sunflowers that my mom gave me before she passed, standing at my stove, stirring something in my Dutch oven. Her gray hair was pulled back in that tight bun she always wore, the one that made her look like a school principal from a Victorian novel. She looked comfortable. At home. More at home than I'd ever seen her. The living room had been rearranged. The couch, our couch, the one Derek and I had saved up for, the one we'd assembled together on a Saturday afternoon while drinking cheap wine and laughing at the incomprehensible IKEA instructions, was pushed against the wrong wall. There were children's toys scattered across the floor, bright plastic things, a stuffed elephant, building blocks, things that didn't belong here because Derek and I didn't have kids yet. We'd been trying. God, we'd been trying. But between my hospital schedule and his, well, that's a different story. My bedroom door was open. I could see inside. The bed was stripped. My nightstand gone. The photos of Derek and me from our honeymoon in Cape Cod gone. Perfect timing, Everly. Miriam's voice cut through the fog in my brain. She didn't even turn around, just kept stirring whatever was in that pot, casual as Sunday morning. I couldn't speak. Literally couldn't form words. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. She finally turned to face me, wooden spoon in hand, and smiled. That smile. The one she'd given me at our wedding when she told me I looked adequate in my dress. The one she'd given me every Thanksgiving when she commented on how brave I was to work nights instead of focusing on family. "We've already cleared your stuff," she said, gesturing vaguely toward the hallway with the spoon. A drop of whatever she was cooking looked like beef stew fell onto my kitchen floor. She didn't notice. Or didn't care. "My daughter's family arrives tonight. The kids need the space, you understand? 2 bedrooms is really tight for a family of 4. I felt my legs wobble. "Your daughter?" "Rebecca and Tom. And the twins, of course." She said it like I should have known. Like this was a plan everyone had been in on except me. They're moving back from Boston. Tom's company transferred him. And you know Rebecca, she'd never ask, but I could tell she was struggling in that tiny apartment they had. This place is perfect for them. This is my apartment." My voice came out strangled. "Derek and I, we live here. We've lived here for 3 years." "Well, technically it's Derek's apartment," Miriam said, turning back to her stew. "His name is on the lease, and he agreed that family comes first. Blood family." That's when I saw him. Derek. Standing in the doorway of what used to be our bedroom, his hands shoved deep in his pockets, his eyes focused on the floor like there was something fascinating about our scuffed hardwood. He wouldn't look at me. "Derek?" My voice cracked on his name. "What did you do?" He flinched. Actually flinched. But he still didn't look up. Miriam answered for him. "He did what any good son would do. He put family first. Rebecca needs this apartment, Everly. She has children. What do you have? A job that keeps you away all night?" A career that's more important than building a real family? The room started to spin. I grabbed the door frame to steady myself. Your things are all packed, Miriam continued, pleasant as poison. Derek was very thorough. We've arranged for a storage unit, don't worry. We'll pay the first month. And I'm sure you can find somewhere to stay. Maybe one of your nurse friends has a couch? I looked at Derek, really looked at him, waiting for him to say something, to tell his mother she was insane, to tell me this was a joke, a horrible, cruel joke. But he just stood there, silent, complicit. My husband, the man who'd promised to love me, protect me, choose me, was letting his mother throw me out of my own home while I was at work saving people's lives. What did you do? I whispered again. And Miriam smiled wide, victorious, final. What I had to, she said. This apartment belongs to the family now. The wooden spoon kept stirring. The beef stew kept bubbling. And I stood there in my bloody scrubs, surrounded by boxes with my name on them, realizing that while I'd been fighting to save strangers, I'd lost everything that mattered. The smell of lavender from Miriam's perfume pulled me back to the first time I ever met her, 7 years ago, standing in Derek's childhood kitchen in Queens while she looked me up and down like I was a cut of meat she wasn't sure was worth buying. I was 22 then, working double shifts at Mount Sinai, living in a studio in Washington Heights that was so small I could touch both walls if I stretched my arms out. But I had a plan. God, I had such a plan. I was going to save enough for a real apartment, something with 2 bedrooms, something with windows that actually opened and floors that didn't creak when you walked. I was going to build something solid because I'd grown up with nothing, and I'd promised myself I'd never live like that again. My parents were gone by the time I was 19, car accident on the Taconic. One moment I had a family, the next I was an only child standing in a funeral home wondering how you're supposed to bury 2 people at once when you can barely afford 1 casket. So I worked. I worked like my life depended on it because it did. Double shifts, triple shifts sometimes. Holidays, weekends, overnights. While my nursing school friends were out in the East Village drinking cocktails they couldn't afford, I was emptying bedpans and holding the hands of dying strangers and saving every single dollar. It took me 4 years, but I bought this apartment, all cash, 26 years old with a deed in my name and keys that were mine. 2 bedrooms in Astoria, not fancy, not renovated, but mine. I cried the day I signed those papers. Cried like a baby right there in the title company office while some lawyer in a cheap suit looked at me like I was unhinged. I didn't care. I'd done it. Built something from nothing. And then I met Derek. He was kind, back then. Gentle. He worked in IT for a marketing firm, had steady hours, wore button-down shirts, and laughed at my terrible jokes. We met at a friend's barbecue in Astoria Park. He walked me home, kissed me on my doorstep like we were in some old movie. When I showed him the apartment, my apartment, he looked around with this soft smile and said, "You did this all yourself?" I nodded. "That's incredible," he whispered. "You're incredible." I believed him. We got married 2 years later. Small ceremony at City Hall. Dinner at an Italian place in Little Italy. Honeymoon weekend in Cape Cod because that's all we could afford. I added his name to the lease because that's what you do when you marry someone, right? You share. You trust. You build together. Miriam came to the wedding in black, said it was slimming, gave us a card with $50 inside and told Derek, loud enough for me to hear, that it wasn't too late to reconsider. But I kept trying. I kept giving. When Derek got laid off 6 months after the wedding, I picked up extra shifts, paid the rent alone for 4 months. Came home exhausted, feet bleeding through my compression socks, and still made him dinner because he was going through something. When Miriam needed rides to her cardiologist appointments in Manhattan, I drove her. Rearranged my sleep schedule, sat in her doctor's waiting room reading outdated magazines, drove her home, helped her up the stairs to her apartment in Sunnyside. She never said thank you. Just pursed her lips and said things like, "The traffic was terrible. You should have taken Queens Boulevard." I bought her groceries, expensive ones, organic vegetables, the good bread from that bakery she liked on 30th Avenue, left them on her counter with a note, "Thinking of you, E." She'd call Derek later and mention, casually, that the tomatoes were bruised. But I told myself it didn't matter. That kindness stabilizes a family. That if I just kept giving, kept proving myself, she'd eventually see me, really see me. Derek started changing, slowly. So slowly I almost didn't notice. He stopped asking about my shifts. Started repeating things his mother said, how maybe I worked too much, how maybe it wasn't healthy for a marriage when the wife was never home. How Rebecca, his sister, had figured out work-life balance by staying home with her kids. I swallowed it, swallowed all of it. Because I loved him, because I believed in us. Because I'd already lost one family, and I wasn't about to lose another. But there were signs. Small things, things I should have noticed. Like the way Miriam started showing up unannounced, letting herself in with Derek's key, walking through the apartment slowly, touching things, the counters, the window frames, the bedroom door. "Good bones," she'd say. "This place has good bones." Or the way she'd stand in the living room and mention, casually, how Rebecca's twins would love this space. Or that day, God, I remember it so clearly now, when I came home early from a shift because a water main had broken at the hospital. I turned my key in the lock, and it didn't work. I stood there, confused, trying again. Then I heard the deadbolt slide from the inside. Derek opened the door, looking flustered. Behind him, barely visible in the dim hallway, was Miriam, holding a key. My key. The spare I kept in the kitchen drawer. She was testing it in the lock. "Just making sure it works," she'd said, smiling. "In case of emergencies." I should have known then. If you've ever given everything to someone who later turned away, you'll understand this part. Thank you to everyone who keeps these stories alive. Every word you share, every act of kindness helps protect those who still believe in family. Standing there now, surrounded by boxes with my name on them, I finally understood what Miriam had been doing all along. She'd been measuring my apartment, my marriage, my life, waiting for the right moment to take it all. I couldn't breathe. My lungs were working, pulling air in, pushing it out, but nothing was reaching my brain. The room tilted sideways, and I grabbed the doorframe harder, nails digging into the painted wood. "Why?" The word came out broken. "Why are my things in boxes?" Miriam set down her wooden spoon with deliberate care, like we were having a perfectly normal conversation about the weather. "I told you, dear, Rebecca's family needs the space. They arrive at 6. This is my apartment." My voice was rising now, shaking. "I bought this apartment. My name is on the deed." "Was on the deed?" Miriam corrected, smoothing her apron. "My apron. Derek had it transferred months ago. Family unity agreement. Perfectly legal." The floor dropped out from under me. "What?" Derek finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "Mom helped me with the paperwork," she said. She said it made sense. "For tax purposes. For the family." Tax purposes? I was screaming now. I never screamed. 12 years of nursing had taught me to stay calm during every crisis, every code, every death. But this was different. "You forged my signature?" "We didn't forge anything," Miriam said coolly. "Derek has power of attorney. You signed it yourself when you updated your will last year. Remember? After your appendectomy?" I did remember. I'd been drugged up on pain medication, and Derek had brought me papers to sign just in case something happened. "Insurance stuff," he'd said. "Protection." I trusted him. God, I trusted him. You can't just. I couldn't form sentences. My brain was short-circuiting, trying to process how the man I'd married, the man I'd saved from financial ruin, the man I'd loved, could stand there and let his mother steal my home. "How long?" I asked, turning to Derek. "How long have you been planning this?" He wouldn't meet my eyes, just stared at his shoes like a child caught stealing candy. Miriam answered for him. "About 6 months. When Rebecca's husband got the transfer offer, we knew the timing had to be perfect." She said it like she was describing a successful dinner party. "We studied your schedule, dear. All those night shifts, very predictable. Made it easy to handle the paperwork, the movers, the arrangements." 6 months. 6 months of lies. 6 months of coming home to Derek's kisses, his "how was work, babe," his "I love you" mumbled into my hair while he was actively plotting to throw me out. "The business trip," I whispered. "Last week. You said you had a business trip to Philadelphia." Derek flinched. "He was helping me move furniture from storage," Miriam said, "and documenting the apartment for the cohabitation claim. We needed photos showing Rebecca's family already using the space. Legal requirements, you understand." I wanted to vomit. I wanted to scream. I wanted to collapse on the floor and sob until there was nothing left inside me. But I just stood there, frozen, while Miriam kept talking. "You have to understand, Everly. This isn't personal. Rebecca has children, real family, a future. What do you have? A career that keeps you away more than your home? You don't even use half this space. It's wasteful. I bought this space, I said through gritted teeth. I worked myself to the bone for 4 years to buy this apartment. This is mine. Was yours? Miriam corrected gently, like she was explaining something to a slow child. Family comes first. Blood family. Surely you understand that. Something caught my eye then. The bedroom. Through the open door, I could see my dresser. The antique one my mother had left me. The only thing I had from her besides photos and memories. The top drawer was open. Wide open. I pushed past Miriam and Derek, stumbling into the bedroom. The drawer, my personal documents drawer, had been ransacked. Papers scattered. Folders opened. My birth certificate. My nursing license. My parents' death certificates. The deed to the apartment. My passport. All of it rifled through like trash. What did you do? I turned on Derek, and something in my voice made him step back. What did you do with my documents? Mom needed them for the transfer, he mumbled. She said, I spat. Do you have a single thought in your head that didn't come from her? His face flushed red. For a second, just a second, I saw something like shame flash across his features. Then Miriam's hand landed on his shoulder, and it was gone. Derek did what any good son would do, she said. He chose family. Real family. Not some woman he met at a party who convinced him to put her name on an apartment she couldn't afford on her own. The lie was so breathtaking, so perfectly constructed, that I actually laughed. A harsh, broken sound that didn't sound like me at all. I bought this apartment 3 years before I met him, I said quietly. Every dollar was mine. Miriam smiled. That's not what the paperwork says. The silence that followed was absolute, heavy, the kind of silence that comes right before something breaks. I stood there in my bloody scrubs, in my ransacked bedroom, in the apartment I'd built from nothing, and realized that the family I'd tried so hard to protect had been planning my destruction all along. If you've ever trusted someone so deeply that their betrayal made you question your own worth, you're not alone. Thank you to everyone who helps me tell these stories. Your support keeps this space alive for those who still believe that truth, somehow, will always find its way. I looked at Derek one last time. He still wouldn't meet my eyes. And in that moment, something inside me stopped breaking and started hardening into something else entirely. Something cold. Something patient. Something that knew exactly what to do next. I don't remember deciding to move. One moment I was standing in the bedroom doorway staring at my ransacked drawer, and the next I was walking through the apartment like a ghost, touring the ruins of her own life. Each room felt wrong. Contaminated. The living room where Derek and I used to watch old movies on Sunday mornings, furniture pushed to the walls, children's toys already colonizing the floor, a pink tricycle. Building blocks spelling out someone else's name. The kitchen where I'd made him soup when he had the flu, where we'd slow danced at midnight after too much wine, now Miriam's domain, her spices in my cabinet, her recipes taped to my refrigerator, her casserole dish in my oven. The bathroom where I'd cried the morning I took my boards, where Derek had held me and promised everything would be okay, cleared of my things, my toothbrush gone. My shampoo bottles replaced with children's tearless soap, cartoon characters smiling from the labels. Even the air felt different, heavier. Like the apartment itself had exhaled me and breathed in someone else. I tried to speak, opened my mouth, but nothing came out except a sound that wasn't quite a word, wasn't quite a sob. Just air escaping from somewhere deep inside me that had finally cracked open. Miriam was still talking, something about paint colors, about how Rebecca wanted soft yellow for the kids' room, something cheerful and warm. Derek stood behind her, hands in his pockets, eyes on the floor. I waited for him to look at me. To say something. To stop this. He didn't. The silence was suffocating. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that presses down on your chest until breathing becomes work. The kind that makes you realize how small you are, how easily you can be erased. I walked to the door, stepped into the hallway, closed it behind me without a word. The stairwell was cold, concrete and metal and fluorescent lights that buzzed like dying insects. I sat down on the top step, my back against the wall, still wearing my scrubs from the hospital. Still smelling like antiseptic and other people's emergencies. The tears came then. Silent. No sobbing, no gasping, just wetness sliding down my face like my body was leaking grief it couldn't contain anymore. For the first time in years, maybe ever, I felt completely alone. Not lonely. Alone. There's a difference. Lonely is wanting someone. Alone is realizing there's no one left to want. That the people you built your life around have already moved on, already replaced you, already started telling stories where you don't exist. I thought about my parents, about how they'd be horrified if they could see this. My mother, who'd taught me to be kind, to give people chances, to believe in family. My father, who'd worked 3 jobs to keep us afloat, who'd taught me that hard work and honesty would always be enough. They'd been wrong. Or maybe I'd been wrong to believe them. I pulled my knees to my chest, making myself smaller. The stairwell echoed footsteps from somewhere below, a door slamming on another floor, the distant wail of a car alarm on the street. City sounds, New York sounds. The sounds of millions of people living their lives while mine crumbled into boxes in a hallway. Was I really that blind? The question circled in my head like a vulture. All those signs I'd ignored. Miriam's measuring glances. Derek's slow withdrawal. The way he'd stopped asking about my day, stopped touching me unless I initiated it, stopped seeing me as anything more than an obstacle between his mother and whatever she wanted. I'd been so busy trying to be good enough, working harder, giving more, proving my worth that I'd missed the obvious truth. It didn't matter what I did. They'd already decided I was disposable. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I almost didn't look. What was the point? Who would be texting me at 8 a.m. on a Wednesday except the hospital asking me to pick up another shift? But I looked anyway. Mrs. Chen, my elderly neighbor from 3B, the woman I'd helped carry groceries up the stairs every Thursday for the past 2 years. The woman whose cat I'd fed when she had her hip surgery. Everly, I saw strangers inside your place all morning, moving furniture. Are you okay? I stared at the text, read it 3 times, 4. She'd seen them. Someone had witnessed what they'd done, not just heard about it later, not just been told a sanitized version of events, she'd seen it happening. If you've ever sat in a room so quiet it started to echo your thoughts, you'll understand this silence. Thank you to those who help keep these stories alive. Your kindness helps give voice to people who've been forgotten, who sit alone in their pain, waiting to be seen again. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. What could I even say? Yes, my husband and his mother stole my apartment while I was at work saving lives? No, I'm not okay. I'm sitting in a stairwell crying in my bloody scrubs. But before I could type anything, another text came through. I have photos. Took them from my window. Thought something was wrong. Do you need them? I stopped breathing. Photos? Mrs. Chen had photos of them moving my things, of Derek and Miriam ransacking my home while I was at the hospital. Evidence that this wasn't some mutual agreement, some peaceful family arrangement. Evidence of theft. My hands were shaking as I typed back, "Yes. Please, I need them." The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Come to my apartment. I'll make tea." And Everly? Whatever's happening, you're not alone. Something shifted inside me then. Not hope exactly. Not yet. But something harder. Colder, clearer. I stood up, wiped my face with the back of my hand, and started down the stairs. Mrs. Chen's tea was still hot in my hands when I made the call. The lawyer's office was in Midtown, glass towers and marble lobbies and people in suits who looked like they'd never missed a meal. I sat in the waiting room during my lunch break, still in scrubs, eating a granola bar from the vending machine, while perfectly coiffed receptionists pretended not to stare. Attorney Sarah Kim saw me at 1:15 p.m. She was younger than I expected, maybe 40, sharp black suit, reading glasses perched on her nose. She listened to my story without interrupting, taking notes in neat, precise handwriting. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and said 4 words that changed everything. "This is a crime." My heart stopped. "The apartment is yours," she continued, pulling up documents on her computer. "Purchased solely in your name, 3 years before marriage. New York law is clear that makes it separate property, not marital property. Your husband has 0 legal claim to it." But he said. He lied. Her voice was clinical, matter of fact. The family transfer agreement his mother mentioned doesn't exist in any legal capacity. And power of attorney doesn't give him the right to transfer real estate. That requires explicit authorization, notarized, witnessed. Did you sign anything like that? No. Then what they've done is forgery, fraud, and trespassing. Possibly elder abuse, if they tried to claim you were mentally incompetent. She typed something. Frowned. How old is your mother-in-law? 68. And her daughter's family, you said they're moving in? That's what Miriam told me. Sarah Kim made a phone call. 3 minutes of legal jargon I barely understood. When she hung up, her expression had shifted from professional to something harder. Rebecca Torres and her husband are 4 months behind on rent in Boston. Eviction proceedings started last month. Your mother-in-law has been telling people at her senior center that she secured a new home, for them your home. The room tilted. There's more, Sarah said quietly. Your husband made inquiries at 2 banks last month about incapacity transfer rules, asking how property ownership works if someone is deemed mentally unfit. I couldn't breathe. He was trying to declare me incompetent? Or laying groundwork to claim it later? Either way, she slid a folder across the desk. Everything they've done is documented here. Illegal entry, fraudulent documents, conspiracy to commit theft. This isn't a family dispute, Mrs. Torres. This is organized crime. I stared at the folder. My hands were shaking. What do I do? You go home tomorrow morning. You record everything, audio, video, whatever you can. Document who's there, what they say, what they've removed. Then you call the police and file a report for trespassing and theft. After that, we file for emergency injunctive relief and a restraining order. She leaned forward, her voice softening. And Everly, you take back what's yours. If you've ever found truth in the quiet moments after pain, you know what this part feels like. Thank you to everyone who supports these stories. Your kindness keeps hope alive for people still finding their voice after betrayal. I walked out of that office with the folder clutched to my chest, 43 pages of evidence that my husband and his mother had tried to erase me. But they'd made one critical mistake. They'd assumed I was too tired, too kind, too broken to fight back. They'd forgotten that the woman who'd built something from nothing at 19, who'd survived losing her parents at 19, who'd worked double shifts for years to buy her own home, that woman was still here. And she was done being silent. There comes a point when silence stops meaning defeat. It becomes preparation. I worked my next shift with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Every IV line I placed, every vitals check I documented, every patient I comforted, I did it all with the focused precision of someone who just remembered who she was. Between rounds I stopped by the hospital's administrative office, asked to use their safe, told them I had important documents I needed to protect. They didn't ask questions. Nurses storing valuables at work wasn't unusual in a city where apartments got broken into. I placed the deed to my apartment inside. My parents' death certificates, my nursing license, the folder from Sarah Kim. Everything that proved I existed, that I'd built something, that I wasn't just some disposable woman who could be erased while she slept. The safe clicked shut with a sound like a promise. Back on the floor, I charged my phone to 100%, cleared the storage, downloaded a recording app that could run in the background for hours, tested it 3 times to make sure the audio was clear. My hands didn't shake once. During my lunch break, I stopped at the bodega on 31st Street, bought groceries, milk, bread, eggs, coffee. Things a woman would buy if she was planning to stay, if she was unsuspecting, if she hadn't just been given a legal roadmap to destroy the people who'd tried to destroy her. The cashier Carlos, who'd been ringing me up for 3 years, asked if I was okay. I will be, I told him. And I meant it. I finished my shift at 2 a.m. The morning light was pale and cold, the kind of light that makes New York look like a black and white photograph. I sat in my car in the hospital parking garage for 10 minutes, breathing slowly, organizing my thoughts like I was prepping for surgery. Step 1. Record everything. Step 2. Call the police. Step 3. Let the law do what kindness couldn't. For years, I mistook generosity for love. Now, I'm learning the quiet math of self-respect. I drove home. Parked on the street. Climbed the stairs slowly, phone already recording in my jacket pocket, camera lens positioned just right. The boxes were still there, my boxes, my name in black Sharpie. But now there were sounds coming from inside, children crying, furniture scraping across hardwood floors, adult voices discussing where to put the couch. I stood outside my own door, listening. Then I used my key, the key they hadn't thought to change yet because they were arrogant, because they assumed I'd just disappear quietly into whatever storage unit they'd rented for my life. The lock turned. I pushed open the door. The apartment was chaos. Rebecca's twins, maybe 5 years old, were running circles around the living room. Her husband Tom was assembling a crib in what used to be my office. Derek was carrying boxes from the bedroom. And Miriam stood in the kitchen, still wearing my apron. Now frosting a cake like this was some kind of celebration. They all froze when they saw me. "Oh," Miriam said, recovering first with that smooth, practiced smile. "You're back again? Did you forget something?" I said nothing. Just stood there, phone recording everything, watching them all scramble to look innocent. "Everly," Derek started, setting down a box. "Mom thought it would be easier if we just—" "Where's your furniture?" I asked quietly, looking at Rebecca. "All those boxes from Boston. Where are they?" Rebecca blinked. We sold most of it. For the move." "You sold it?" I let the words hang there. 4 months behind on rent. Eviction notice. Sold your furniture. And now you're in my apartment. Tom stepped forward. "Look, Derek said this was all arranged. Family agreement. We wouldn't have come if we'd known." "Known what?" I asked. "That this apartment isn't Derek's? That I bought it 3 years before I met him? That every document his mother showed you is fraud?" The room went silent. Rebecca looked at Miriam. "Mom, you said—" "She said a lot of things," I interrupted. "None of them true." I pulled out my phone, held it up so they could see the recording in progress. "But that's okay. Because now I have all of you on camera, in my apartment, admitting you moved my belongings without permission." Miriam's face changed. The smile disappeared like someone had flipped a switch. "Everly," she said slowly. "Who did you call?" I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt nothing. No anger, no pain. Just the cold, clear certainty of someone who'd finally stopped asking permission to exist. "My lawyer," I said. "Yesterday. And this morning." I pulled up my recent calls, showed her the screen. I called the police. The color drained from her face. "They should be here in about—" I checked my watch. 3 minutes. It's funny how silence can sound like thunder when guilt starts to echo. Derek's eyes went wide. "Everly, you can't—" "Can't what? Report a crime? Protect my property? Stand up for myself?" I smiled, and it felt like the first real smile I'd had in months. "Watch me." Through the window I heard it, sirens, getting closer. For the first time I didn't need them to hear me. My silence had already spoken. The sirens stopped outside my building at 7:23 a.m. I know because I was staring at the clock on the microwave Miriam had pushed 6 inches to the left to make room for her daughter's blender, watching the seconds tick forward like a countdown. 2 officers appeared in the doorway, one older, maybe 50, with the tired eyes of someone who'd seen every kind of human mess. One younger, female, with a notebook already out. "Someone called about a property dispute?" the older officer said. "I did." I stepped forward, pulled the folder from my bag. "My name is Everly Torres. This is my apartment. I have the deed here, purchased solely in my name in 2019, 3 years before my marriage." I handed him the documents. He flipped through them slowly while his partner surveyed the room, the children's toys, the moving boxes, the family of 5 standing frozen like they'd been caught mid-crime. Because they had. "And who are these people?" he asked, looking up. "My husband, my mother-in-law, my sister-in-law's family." I kept my voice level. "Clinical. I left for my night shift at the hospital yesterday at 5 p.m. When I returned this morning, they'd packed my belongings and moved them into my home without my knowledge or consent." The younger officer turned to Miriam. "Ma'am, do you have any legal right to be here?" Miriam's face flushed red. "This is a family matter. My son lives here. He has every right." "Does your son's name appear on this deed?" the officer interrupted, holding up my paperwork. Silence. "Ma'am, I asked you a question." "Well, no, but—" "Then you're trespassing." She turned to Derek. "Sir, is your name on any ownership documents for this property?" Derek's mouth opened, closed. He looked at his mother like a child waiting for her to fix this. "She couldn't." "He has power of attorney," Miriam tried. "We transferred." "Power of attorney doesn't grant property rights," the older officer said flatly. "Did Miss Torres give you written, notarized permission to transfer this property?" "She didn't need to. This is family." "That's not a legal answer." He looked at me. "Miss Torres, did you authorize any transfer of this property?" "No." Did you give anyone permission to enter your home and remove your belongings? No. He nodded, turned back to the room. Everyone here except Miss Torres is in violation of New York Penal Law, Article 140, criminal trespass. You have 30 minutes to gather your things and vacate the premises. Rebecca started crying. But we have nowhere to go. Our lease in Boston. Not my problem, the officer said. You knowingly moved into someone else's property without permission. That's a crime. This is ridiculous. Miriam's voice rose to a shriek. My son has been supporting this apartment for years. Actually, I said quietly, I have bank statements showing I've paid 100% of the rent and utilities since we moved in. Would you like to see those too? The room went silent. Miriam's face twisted. She clutched her chest suddenly, gasping, I can't breathe, my heart. The younger officer reached for her radio. I'll call an ambulance. No. Miriam straightened up immediately, hand dropping. No, I'm fine. The officers exchanged a look. Ma'am, if you're having a medical emergency. She's not, I said. She does this when she doesn't get her way. She did it at our wedding when Derek wouldn't change the seating chart. Miriam's eyes blazed with pure hatred. You ungrateful little. That's enough, the older officer said. Everyone start packing, now, or we'll escort you out with nothing. They moved like sleepwalkers. Rebecca and Tom gathering their children's toys. Miriam yanking her casserole dish from my oven. Derek carrying boxes, the same boxes they'd packed my life into, back down the stairs. I stood by the window and watched. Watched Miriam struggle with a box marked kitchen, her face red with exertion and rage. Watched Rebecca crying in the stairwell, trying to explain to her 5-year-old twins why they had to leave. Watched Derek make trip after trip, never once looking up at my window. On his 5th trip, he stopped at the bottom of the stairs, looked up. Our eyes met through the glass. He mouthed something, please. I turned away. 20 minutes later, the older officer knocked on my door. They're gone. You want to press charges? I thought about it. About fraud charges, and criminal trespassing, and the satisfaction of watching them squirm in court. Then I thought about the years I'd wasted trying to make them love me. No, I said, I just want them gone. He nodded. Smart. We'll file a report anyway, in case they try to come back. He handed me a card. You need new locks, today, and maybe a security camera. Already ordered, I said. The locksmith arrived 40 minutes later. I watched him install new deadbolts, 3 of them, heavy duty, the kind you can't pick or force. Each one made a solid, final click as it slid into place. When he left, I stood in the center of my apartment. My apartment. The silence was absolute. No children crying, no Miriam humming, no Derek making excuses in the next room. Just me, and the home I'd built, and the truth that had set me free. I walked to the door, tested each new lock. Click, click, click. The sound of safety. The sound of justice. The sound of a woman who'd finally stopped asking permission to exist in her own life. After the verdict, silence became my favorite sound. It was the sound of justice finally breathing. I didn't follow their story, didn't need to. New York is a small city when people start talking, and people always start talking when someone falls from grace. Mrs. Chen told me first, 3 weeks after the police escorted them out. She caught me in the hallway, carrying groceries, and pulled me aside with that look people get when they have gossip too good to keep. Derek moved back in with his mother, she whispered. I saw the moving truck. Only took them 2 hours, didn't have much to move. I nodded, said nothing. And Miriam's daughter? The one with the twins? Mrs. Chen leaned closer. They're staying at a motel off the BQE. Week to week. I heard Tom's looking for work, but nobody's hiring. I thought about Rebecca's twins running circles in my living room, their toys scattered across my floor. Wondered if they understood why they were sleeping in a motel now, instead of the nice apartment Grandma promised. Probably not. Kids that age don't understand adult greed, they just know the bed feels different and Mom cries more now. The next piece came from Carlos at the bodega. Your mother-in-law was in here yesterday, he said, ringing up my coffee. Trying to return a casserole dish. Said she didn't have the receipt. I told her we don't sell casserole dishes. He paused. Think she took it from your place? Probably, I said. She's been telling people you kicked her out for no reason. That you're mentally unstable. He looked at me seriously. Nobody believes her, by the way. We all know you. We've seen you come home from shifts barely able to walk, still stopping to help people carry groceries. She thought we'd forget that. I smiled. Thanks, Carlos. Word spread faster than I expected. Astoria's tight-knit like that, everyone knows everyone, and loyalty runs deep when you've been part of the neighborhood long enough. I heard through my coworker Janet that Miriam tried to attend her usual senior center activities, but the other women had frozen her out. Apparently, she'd been bragging for months about securing a beautiful apartment for her daughter, showing people photos she'd taken of my home like it was hers to give. When the truth came out that she'd tried to steal her daughter-in-law's property through forgery and fraud, those same women stopped taking her calls. I didn't need to ruin them. Their lies had already done that. 6 weeks after the eviction, Derek texted me. "Can we talk?" I stared at the message for a full minute, then deleted it. He tried again the next day. "Please, Everly, I made a mistake." I blocked his number. 2 days later, he showed up at the hospital, waited in the parking garage, intercepted me as I was getting into my car after a shift. "Everly, please." He looked terrible, unshaven, eyes hollow, wearing the same jacket he'd worn the day the police came. "I know I messed up, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling. Start over." I really looked at him and felt nothing. No anger, no love, not even pity. Just exhaustion at having to explain basic morality to a grown man. "You didn't make a mistake, Derek," I said quietly. "You made a choice. You chose to let your mother pack up my life while I was at work. You chose to help her forge documents. You chose to stay silent while she tried to throw me out of my own home." I opened my car door. "Those weren't mistakes. Those were decisions." "I was scared of her," he said desperately. "You don't know what she's like when she doesn't get her way." "I know exactly what she's like," I interrupted. "I drove her to doctor's appointments. I bought her groceries. I treated her with kindness for years while she planned to steal from me. I got into my car. The difference is, I still chose to be a decent person." He grabbed the door before I could close it. "Where am I supposed to go? She's driving me insane. The apartment is tiny. She never stops talking. I can't." "Not my problem," I said. And I meant it. I pulled the door shut, started the engine, and drove away while he stood there in the parking garage, finally understanding what it felt like to be erased. Miriam tried once, about 3 months later. Showed up at my door on a Sunday morning, dressed like she was going to church, carrying a plant. I watched her through the peephole, this woman who'd worn my apron and served eviction with a smile. She knocked. Waited. Knocked again. "Everly, I know you're home. Your car's outside." Her voice was different now. Smaller. "I just want to talk. To apologize." I stood on the other side of the door, silent, watching her fidget. "Please," she said. "Derek's impossible to live with. Rebecca won't speak to me. I thought maybe we could." She trailed off. Waited another minute. Set the plant down by the door and left. I donated the plant to the hospital lobby the next day. That evening, I sat on my couch, in my apartment, with my new locks on the door and felt peace for the first time in years. The afternoon light came through the windows, pale yellow mixed with gray, casting long shadows across the hardwood floor I'd saved for years to afford. Outside, I could hear the city, sirens and car horns and neighbors arguing and kids playing basketball in the park. New York sounds, life sounds. I'd lost a husband and gained myself back. Some debts don't need to be collected. Life has its own way of balancing the books. After the noise fades, what's left isn't victory, it's understanding. I learned that sitting on my couch 3 months after the locks were changed, drinking tea from the mug my mother gave me years ago, watching the afternoon light paint gold across my living room walls. My walls, my light, my peace. There's a difference between justice and revenge that I didn't understand when this started. When I first saw those boxes in the hallway, when Miriam smiled at me wearing my apron, when Derek couldn't meet my eyes, all I wanted was for them to hurt the way they'd hurt me. I wanted them to feel small, erased, disposable. But standing in that apartment after the police escorted them out, after the locksmith installed new deadbolts, after the silence finally settled, I realized something. Justice isn't about watching them fall. It's about standing again without hate. The hate would have kept me chained to them, would have meant checking their social media, asking neighbors for updates, obsessing over whether they were suffering enough. I would have won the apartment but lost myself in the process. And I'd already lost too much to them. So I chose differently. I rebuilt my routine slowly, carefully, like someone recovering from surgery. Work, home, tea by the window, reading in bed without jumping at every sound in the hallway, grocery shopping on Saturdays, morning runs in Astoria Park. Simple things, normal things, things I'd forgotten how to do without fear. I visited Sarah Kim one last time to finalize the restraining order, sat in her glass tower office while she slid the documents across her desk, neat and official and legally binding. "They can't contact you, can't come within 500 feet of your home or workplace," she said. "Violation results in immediate arrest." I signed my name, just my name, not Torres anymore, and felt something unlock in my chest. "How are you doing?" Sarah asked, her voice softer now, less lawyer and more human. "I'm learning," I said. And I was. I was learning that kindness isn't weakness, but giving it to the wrong people is. That love shouldn't require you to shrink yourself until you disappear. That family, real family, doesn't measure your worth in square footage or bank statements. I was learning that sometimes you have to lose the wrong people to make space for your own peace. The restraining order went into effect on a Tuesday. By Thursday, I'd rearranged the furniture back to how I wanted it. Friday, I bought new curtains pale blue instead of the beige Miriam had insisted matched better. Saturday, I painted the bedroom wall a soft sage green that made the morning light feel like hope. I didn't lose my home. I lost the people who thought they could steal it, and that was a blessing. One evening, about 4 months after everything, I sat on my fire escape watching the sunset paint the sky pink and orange over the Manhattan skyline. The city hummed below, cars and voices and music from someone's open window mixing into that particular symphony that only exists in New York. I thought about my parents, about my mother teaching me to be kind, to give people second chances, to believe in the goodness of family. About my father working himself to exhaustion so I could have opportunities he never had. They'd been right about so many things. But they'd been wrong about one critical thing. Not everyone deserves your kindness. Not everyone who calls themselves family has earned that title. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is say no. I finally did it. I whispered to the sky, to them, to the version of myself who used to think sacrifice equaled love. I chose peace over pride. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of someone's cooking from a nearby apartment, garlic and tomatoes, something warm and Italian, life continuing, ordinary and beautiful. I used to believe love meant giving everything. Now I know love also means knowing when to stop. Not because you're cruel, not because you're selfish, but because you understand that you can't pour from an empty cup, can't build a life on a foundation of resentment, can't save people who are determined to drown. Derek and Miriam taught me that, though I doubt they meant to. They taught me that greed disguises itself as family. That betrayal often grows in silence, in the small compromises you make to keep the peace. That sometimes the people closest to you can look at your life and see nothing but what they can take from it. But they also taught me something more important, that I'm stronger than I thought. That truth is more powerful than manipulation. That justice doesn't require revenge, just courage, and the willingness to stand up and say enough. If my story teaches anything, it's this. Kindness without boundaries isn't love, it's surrender. And I'm done surrendering. The sun dipped below the buildings, leaving the sky streaked with purple and deep blue. I finished my tea, stood up, stretched, and went back inside. My apartment, my rules, my life. Justice gave me back my name. But peace gave me back myself. If you've ever lost yourself trying to love someone who only saw your worth in numbers, I hope my story reminds you, it's never too late to choose yourself. Thank you for keeping these stories alive, stories where justice doesn't shout, it heals.